Hey there, this is Beth.
Beth, just letting everyone know that we are in the process of giving everybody their microphone access, so keep an eye on your mute and unmute button.
Thanks, Natasha.
You want us to report in when we have the mute and unmute?
We're actually going to do in the introductions, we're going to do the microphone test.
Okay, I'll put mine on mute.
Okay.
Quick thing I wanted to run by you.
Bill,
I
just
have a friend.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, good evening. This is Malcolm McClendon. Can you guys hear me? Just doing a quick microphone check.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, this is Mike Munson from the Airport Authority.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll get started here in well, it's already 4.
I just
We
few
have
more people to mute.
2 more people. Okay.
Yep.
We'll give them about a minute or 2.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Who was
Thank
that?
I can hear you.
All righty. Are we still waiting on people? Natasha?
Sorry,
Natasha,
I
how-
think we're missing one. Oh, nope, we just got our last primary. So we have all of our primaries in right
Okay.
now, missing a couple alternates.
Okay, good. Well, I think we can go ahead and start.
Okay. Will do. All righty.
Agencies, are all the agencies on or most of them?
I'm missing Tim. Hold on. Yeah, I don't see Ascota Township.
Aaron Weed is filling in for Tim Cummings.
Oh, okay. Yes, we have Aaron. Sorry, Aaron.
Can you give us the status of the agencies? There are 7 plus the Air Force. Plus
Yes, we have everyone now.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Let's go ahead and switch over to this evening's presentation, and we'll start from there. So kicking it off now, my name is Malcolm McClendon. I work for the Air Force Public Affairs Office. I help out BRAC for this meeting. However, I'll be just my role will be facilitation of the meeting. So before we get into the meeting and introductions, I'd like to hand it over to the co-chairs for any opening remarks, and then we'll proceed. So we can start out with Dave, if you have anything, any opening remarks.
Oh, just glad that everybody's here. Hope it goes well.
Okay, thank you. Arnie?
And I'd just like to say, after the virtual meeting in April, the Air Force has been really proactive in improving the format and the capabilities, and we greatly appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Arnie. Okay, then we'll go ahead and proceed. We're going to get into the introductions. First, if we can move to the next slide there, we got for the Air Force, David Gibson, you heard from him. And then the next is going to be Arnie Lariche. He's the community co-chair. And also, and for this segment here, and I know we got the word a little late. Mr. Aaron Weed's going to represent the Oscoda Township, but as an exercise for this segment, if you see your name and your slide pop up, if you could please unmute your mic and introduce yourself. So I'll start with Mr. Well, let's move forward. I think, or let's move forward to Aaron. Okay, and if you could just start there with Aaron Weed or Tim Cummings, right? But the Aaron Weed, there you go, right there. Stop. Okay, Aaron Weed, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Aaron Weed, Oscoda Township Supervisor.
Okay.
Jeff Moss, Asabo Township Trustee.
Beth Place with Eagle RRD, Remediation and Redevelopment.
And this is Mike Munson with the Oscoda Wurtsmith Airport Authority.
Denise Bryan, Health Officer with District Health Department number 2. Puneet Vij, toxicologist with MD HHS.
Jessica Stonteback, USDA Forest Service.
Daniel Stock, primary RAB member, community.
Yeah, there you go. Let's move forward to Robert, or to Joe, rather. I'm sorry.
Primary RAB member.
William Gaines, community RAB.
Kathy Woosterbarth, Need Our Water, Scota resident.
Ryan Mertz, I'm a community member. I work for
Hi, my name is Jerry Schmidt. I'm a community RAB member.
Catherine Larrabee, primary community RAB member.
No longer on the RAB.
Rex Vaughn, RAB alternative.
Greg Schultz.
Jeff Gottlieb, RAB alternate.
Mark Henry from Wilbur Township.
And okay, for this, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce the, if it's okay with everybody, I'll introduce the distinguished guests and visitors that we will have tonight. I'll go ahead and start out with Dr. Stephen Termath. He is a BRAC Program Division Chief. Next. Okay, we also have Mr. Val de la Fuente, also works for BRAC. He's the Execution Branch Chief there. Next. Also recognize Mr. Jacob Bennett, who is on the meeting here today. He represents Congressman Kilde's office. And Mr. Eric Keller, representing Senator Peters' office. And then we'll have as well, Congressman Kildee will be joining us at some moment during the meeting as well. So welcome guests, and thank you for your time and your participation in the RAB. Okay, here's the agenda for this evening's RAB. Let's take a quick look. And again, down at the public comments section, just as a reminder, RAB members will have the opportunity to ask questions and or make comments during the presentations. They will have that ability. As far as other participants from the public, your comments and your questions will be saved. And when it's time for the public comment period at the end, that'll be either your time to make that comment or ask that question. You could also, if you could put a note in there, if it's a comment that you would rather say yourself, just make a little note so that we know that put you on the line there. If it's a question, then most likely I'll ask it. But just make sure you give us a little detail on how you want to use that public comment when it's your turn. So without any further questions, let's move forward. Okay, a couple of RAB rules. You can just look them over for a few minutes or a few seconds rather. Okay, thank you. All right. So let's move on into the stakeholder updates. And I believe our first update is going to be from the Air Force. Next slide. Okay, Dave.
Yep, thank you, Malcolm. This is Dave Gibson. Real quick, just a point of order, I guess you might say. Natasha, can you confirm that we have 9 primary RAB members? I thought we had 2 names, Mr. Taser and James, that didn't respond. So do we have 9 members? Or Arnie, do we have 9?
Without Mr. Taser, we would have 8.
Well, yes, we have 8 because he resigned a month ago, and we'll bring on the 9th one before the co-chair vote.
Okay, the one gentleman that was not no longer on the RAB, that was an alternate member then. So okay, we're good to go then. All right, the updates I have right now, wanted to talk to you all. You now know that our remedial investigation contract that includes interim remedial actions has been awarded. That was on the 14th. There'll be a detailed schedule, IMS type of schedule presented at the October RAB. We'll be addressing key milestones tonight. So you'll be seeing that. The 4th 5-year review is still in review, still in work. I'm hoping to have that before the next RAB out to everyone. Another bit of information that we'll talk about to schedule is the relative risk site evaluation worksheets. They're available for the PFAS sites, and there's training slides. There's about 15 slides that we want to go through with the RAB members. And once we get that training done, then we can establish our public notice and the worksheets go into the administrative record, and the 30-day comment period begins. That's all I have.
Okay, next slide. Okay, we're going to start out with the stakeholder updates. The community RAB members, here's your updates. Please take the floor.
This is Kathy Wurtsmith. Yeah, thank you. I want to just give you an update on community members and what we've been busy doing. I do want you to know that we have encouraged leadership in the RAB, so we did take an active approach on making sure we have continued leadership in the community RAB. We've also strengthened and solidified our continued efforts of the NOW group. So we meet on about a weekly basis. We also meet with state agencies to discuss strategies, and frankly, those strategies include how to engage the state in an effective relationship with the Air Force to benefit our area. We're also working with the National PFAS Contamination Coalition on how to develop strategies nationally in dealing with the Department of Defense. We also take all opportunities possible to discuss the slow and barely perceptible actions here at Wurtsmith Air Force Base with the media and news outlets. The partnerships we have with environmental groups, universities, and legislators are also growing and strengthening. We continue to have outreach and information sharing with our local community online, mostly now, although we had a successful rally just this afternoon, making our voices heard in our community, and we had a lot of support for that. Lastly, we had, there's an award-winning documentary called No Defense that's been produced that tells the story of the plight of our community related to the U.S. Air Force PFAS exposure and contamination of our community. Thank you.
Okay, this is Arnie LaRich, the current co-chair. We've continued to communicate with the agencies on a monthly basis with the leadership team comprised of 5 of us in the community RAB to stay abreast of what the agencies, and that includes ships and all the state agencies in the Air Force, and use that information to stay abreast of some of the things that, a lot of the things that's happening. It's about the only way that we can really know about this on a continuous basis. So we appreciate the Eagle and Beth in managing monthly call. We appreciate that they've updated and they're going to be providing written comments to the members on the leadership, on the stakeholder calls, so that we can better provide accurate details to the public, community members, and to our community RAB members. The main things that we've been working on in prior interim remedial actions that were discussed last call, and we brought up issues on that call, and we have continued to discuss with the Air Force and Eagle remediation, making sure that we understand what their regulations and guidance include, so that when they're talking with us and they're talking with the public tonight, let's say, for example, that we're talking apples to apples. We're talking same definitions of interim mitigation actions, which on one specific is that their instructional manual for and defense remediation program, that they may take interim actions before the RI stage, remedial investigation stage, which they're just starting now. So there could have been interim mitigation actions, additional ones taken in the last 3 years, in our point of view. So that's one thing that we've been doing. Second thing is important for us to communicate and understand what the agencies are doing and to communicate with the Air Force and the public is transparency and timeliness of receiving information that the agencies are doing, including documents, communications. And if we don't have a timely transfer and sharing of those, then we don't have a complete view of what they're discussing and deciding on their own. And that is key. It's an important part of what we need to fix, because there are some lags in timeliness and transparency. So we're working with them on that. As I said earlier, we discussed them with the Air Force, and we had 3 planning sessions and practice sessions to improve this virtual meeting format. So hopefully, and it looks like so far that those improvements are helping in these public meetings. We also, as a community RAB, in addition to the NOW group, which we try to communicate as best we can, there are 2 community groups at this site, and that's great. They both serve important roles, and a lot of those roles overlap. But one thing we've been doing as the community RAB is we've been participating also in the National PFAS Coalition and also attending Department of Defense remediation trainings, webinars, to know what the Air Force is doing on the technology of remediation and investigation. We have to stay, as a community RAB, we have to stay up on those so that we can understand the decisions that they're recommending and taking. And so I'll end there, and if any other community RAB members have something quick to add, please do. Having heard none, Malcolm, I'm all set.
All right, thank you. Just a little a note, Arnie, you were cutting out a little bit in the middle there, but towards the end it seemed to clear up. So I don't know if, but I think most of it got through. But just for your situational awareness.
Well,
okay. Okay, next, does Eagle, anything from Eagle?
Yes, hi, this is Beth Place with the Remediation and Redevelopment Division of Eagle, and I'm the Eagle Project Manager. Eagle will share PFAS data with Air Force and their contractor, and this is the Eagle data that Eagle has collected in the past. Also, Eagle is working on 2 PFAS reports, one on groundwater and soil and one on surface water. And this is from the data that was collected back in 2017 and 2018. The data has been shared with the RAB and community, but we just never compiled that in a report. So those should be coming out before the end of the summer. And then Mike Neller will give the rest of Eagle's update. He's the Remediation and Redevelopment Division's Director, and he'll be discussing the dispute resolution and interim remedial actions. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Mike Neller. First, I wanted to talk about the dispute resolutions. I reported before that all formal disputes that had started almost 3 years ago between Eagle and the Air Force have been resolved. And the final official correspondence from Eagle has been sent stating as such. A copy of that letter has been made available to the RAB and has been posted on the MPART website. After the expanded site investigation was completed in December 2019 by the Air Force, Eagle had sent a letter dated January 31st, 2020, where we requested the Air Force take interim remedial actions to address PFAS contamination in the soil and the groundwater. The actions requested were 1, expanding the capture zone and increasing the pumping rate at the FTO2 pump and treat system. 2, removal of PFAS from the beach plumes at the Van Etten Lake. 3, removal of the PFAS contaminated soil, sediment, and groundwater up gradient of Clark's Marsh in the vicinity of the former base wastewater treatment plant. And 4th, and lastly, we concurred with the ESI recommendation to expand the Mission Street groundwater treatment system. When we made this request for these 4 interim actions, it was from the perspective that there is adequate information to proceed with these interim actions. We do understand many remedial actions on contaminated sites have proven to be more costly or take longer because of inadequate site assessments. We also understand that early actions, and specifically source removal, have shown to reduce the time and money spent cleaning up a site. While we acknowledge the friction between implementation of site cleanup actions and fully characterizing the site, we feel that the citizens of Michigan deserve to have a sense of urgency applied as we move forward with any and all interim response actions requested. This year, the Air Force has received additional funding specifically earmarked for PFAS cleanup actions at the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. The Air Force announced in June that it would be undertaking 2 of the 4 remedial actions requested by Eagle. While this is a start, we do not yet know what is planned and ultimately how effective these measures will be. Clearly, this is not enough, and more resources will need to be authorized for continued and additional cleanup actions. Again, Eagle feels the nature and extent of the contamination has been largely determined. Consequently, it is our opinion that most of the authorized funding should be spent implementing and optimizing the technologies used to clean up the site. Lastly, the Air Force has historically not provided timelines or milestones with expected completion dates associated with plans. We are requesting that this practice change for the process to move forward, where Eagle can operate in good faith under our cooperative agreement with the Air Force. We feel strongly that this is the only way for Eagle, along with the community, can understand this cleanup project and provide input and support this effort. Given that the contract has been let to proceed with some interim actions, we are asking that a timeline or at a minimum of general plan with milestones and timeframes be provided to the members of the RAB no later than September 30th, 2020. And I appreciate Mr. Gibson's comments at the beginning where he indicated that that is in the works and will be provided at the October RAB. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Okay, if we're nothing else from Eagle, I'll move over to the Forest Service. Any updates there? Okay, next slide. If we do get something, I'll come back to that, but next, let's move on to the airport.
Yes, this is Mike Munson.
Okay.
My comments are the Scotia Wurtsmith Airport Authority needs an action item charging the Air Force to disclose to the RAB their design plans for new wells or modifications of existing wells to implement the next generation of PFAS cleanup stations. The locations need to be known for the wells to allow the Airport Authority and or the township to implement any actions on their part to prevent any delays or surprises. Reason for this request? This action item is needed due to the past Air Force cunning efforts to drag their feet on needed actions. Example, the Air Force interpretation of the $13 million of congressionally approved funding was to be used for further investigation, when Congress specifically said the monies were to be used for immediate PFAS remediation. It is imperative that the Air Force be tasked to notify the respective groups in the Wurtsmith area, i.e. the Airport Authority, Township, and the public at large, what, when, and how they plan to place the wells to accelerate the next phase of remedial action, i.e. additional pump and treat stations. This is needed to prevent an escape plan by the Air Force to blame their non-compliance on others because of additional unknown actions are needed to address well issues. The Airport Authority is working on further business actions, and it needs to know as soon as possible any new well locations or modification to existing well locations to allow enough time to make changes to those plans if needed. That's the end of my comment. I will forward this in an email to Mr. Gibson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Township of Osable.
Hi, Jeff Moss, trustee. First, I'd like to thank the state of Michigan, Sue Menente, and the rest of the staff for putting together a virtual town hall meeting for the communities last night. Although it was very informative, it kind of gave me a little insight as to what we need to do, and that is to beg our congressmen and senators to assist us here. Dan Kildee has gotten $13.5 million for cleanup of our surface water and our drinking water. We need help, and we need Congress to instruct the Air Force as to what to do, because based on what I heard last night, we need help. The state can request a myriad of things. They can work as hard as their authority allows them, but without congressional help and direction, we're in a 10-year program to maybe get something done, maybe. So I'm begging our congressmen and senators, please give us more attention. Please give us more help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, Michigan Department of Health Human Services.
Hello, everyone. My name is Puneet Vij. I'm a toxicologist with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I'll give an update regarding MDHHS resampling effort. Currently, we are in the first round of resampling, and we plan to do this about 2 more rounds on a quarterly basis. Our projected timeline for the completion of round 1 is the end of this month, as things got delayed due to COVID-19. So far, we have collected samples from 272 wells out of 427 wells that were previously tested by Eagle. And we are still receiving results each day as we speak. But for now, we have 92 non-detects 83 detections, which are less than the comparison value. And there are 15 detections that are higher than the MDHHS comparison value. That's the update I have.
Okay, thank you. And I just, before we move on to the next stakeholder, seems that we had some hands raised. And I want to make sure that we don't pass over anyone. So let me see who was the first hand was raised. One moment, please. Okay, Kathy, yes, your hand was raised first. So if you want to go ahead and comment something.
Kathy Woosterbar?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, then my hand is raised in error.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, Dave, did you have your hand raised? Dave Gibson?
No, my machine's indicating my hand is down.
Oh, okay, well, cool. Then let's move forward then. So we're gonna move with Oscoda Township.
Aaron Weed, Oscoda Township Supervisor. I have just been trying to wait and hear what the Air Force is going to do for their timelines, which I see they do have some listed here on the future slides. So it's good to see that there's something put in place. However, I'm disappointed in the amount of funding being spent on interim, the low amount being spent on interim actions as opposed to investigations, considering there's an enormous amount of data that's already available and has been for several years. We're also still waiting to hear back from the Air Force regarding their assessment of the stormwater system, for them to be able to pay for using the system. And that is all we have.
Okay, and the next Department of Health.
Good evening, this is Denise. I would like to support what our neighbors and community members expressed to the Air Force, state, and our legislators. I'm imploring our state partners to effectively and expeditiously mobilize to provide all the data that we need to compel the Air Force to implement immediate PFAS remediation. I have a biology background and my master's work is in public health policy. And I am by nature a very patient person. And time's up again, another RAB meeting where we need to express that our health is in jeopardy, our way of life is in jeopardy, and the values of protecting our families and our environment is eroded on a daily basis by bureaucracy. And I feel that the continued exposure of PFAS runoff and contamination off the air base into the Van Etten Lake continues to create a cascading detrimental effect all the way out to Lake Huron. And we will live with questions for the effect on our health, that of our children, and that of our grandchildren. So again, we implore everyone to move expeditiously and it's not even proactive after 6 years anymore. It's do the right thing. And I know there's a lot of turnover in people in the Air Force and at the state. And there's a lot of lovely people as individuals. I have been here since the beginning and I am not going away, and I will continually advocate with our legislators and whoever we need to represent the remediation that our community is rightfully demanding. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we move forward, I believe, Arnie, you had your hand raised.
Just something quickly, because a couple of them have come up, and that is action items. If anyone states something or requests that a topic become a new action item, please state so as part of your statement so that the community RAB and the Air Force can capture it, and we will not miss any, and we can throw them into the tracker. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Beth, did you have your hand raised as well?
Yeah, I did. And so Denise, I appreciate your statement, and you've heard from Mike that Eagle shares several of your viewpoints. I just wanted to reiterate from my part of the update that Eagle will be sharing a complete set of our PFAS data just to make sure it hasn't gotten, lost along the way with the changes. And Dave Gibson and I have already discussed coordinating that with once their contractor is kind of up to speed now that they're on board. So just so you're aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay, Dave Gibson, did you have a comment?
Well, I think we're going to my slides next.
Yeah, I think so.
I was just going to say, I guess at the end of this or beginning of my slide is, I thank you all for your heartfelt input. I want to make sure everyone knows that the Air Force is not going away either. We're in this for the long haul. And I have to say that I'm proud of the Air Force and their efforts to protect the environment. Mr. Weed, I apologize for not including in my initial slide the status of the assessment. I've contacted you by email, and we've confirmed that you're our point of contact for the contractor to, get information if they need it. The only other information that we have at this point is we're looking at the September timeframe for the assessment to be shared with you, by AFCAC. That's all I have for this segment.
Okay, let's move forward. Unless anybody has anything else, let's move forward with the next, with the presentations. Okay, and back to you, Dave.
All right, next slide. So I wanted these next several set of slides are here because I want to really make sure everybody understands that there are treatment systems at Wurtsmith Air Force Base for PFAS in the groundwater. I'm new to the program, so I guess it's not unusual for me not to know that. So we're going to talk about the three systems that are in place: Mission Street Central Treatment System, the Fire Training Area number 2. And then I want to, highlight the history of Fire Training Area number 2. It's been there the longest, and we can talk about what the original goals were and the effectiveness of the plume that it was trying to control. Next slide. So Mission Street's the newest. Became operational December of last year. It's an ion exchange system. So far, 43 million gallons of water have been treated. It's got a flow rate of approximately 190 gallons per minute. It's operational over 95% of the time, and it's successfully treating these PFOS, PFOA, and the PFHXS, less than 4 nanograms per liter. Next slide. The next slide for Central Plant, that's the, I guess you can say, the next newest. It's a granular activated carbon system. It's treated over 206 million gallons since it started up in 2018. Flow rate of 250 gallons a minute. Operational runtime of over 95%. And again, the effluents are less than 4 nanograms per liter. Next slide. And the original or the oldest treatment system was at Fire Training Area number 2 since April 2015. Another granular activated carbon system. Over 619 million gallons of water have been treated. It's got a flow rate of approximately 250 gallons per minute. 95% runtime, and less than 4 nanograms per liter for effluent. Is there a question? Okay, so there's 3 systems been operational for up to 5 years and have been treating the PFAS compounds in at least one portion of the base. And now I want to talk to the next slide. Any questions on the historical or these existing systems?
Yeah, I
this
believe
is
we have Bill Gaines. Okay.
My understanding is that Mission Street and the central treatment system have been pumping from approximately those same well fields since the 1980s. They haven't had PFAS treatment in place, but they have been pumping to aerate fluorocarbons. There's the heart of dispute resolution with EGLE was continuing to operate those after the Air Force requested permission to turn off the fluorocarbon scrubbers, since that had been completed. So for a time prior to our initiation of the RAB, and this was briefed at, I believe, our initial RAB orientation, that those were pumping to put PFAS out of the ground and into the surface water, basically at EGLE's request, the DEQ's request at that time. So they've been pumping a long time, and they really we haven't been told what effectiveness they've had in their pumping. I appreciate the fact that they've been treating relatively recently, but the pumping has been going on for a long time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
We had and before we get out of hand or out of order here, I think we had that was Jeff Moss, right? You just
Mr. Gaines.
That was Mr. Gaines. Okay, now Jeff Moss, I believe you had a question or a hand raised.
I had a question. I was wondering how many parts per trillion the less than 4 nanograms per liter would equate to.
If you're having me do my mental math here, so 4 nanograms, I think is 400 parts per trillion, or I can't remember how it goes. Is this
4 parts per trillion.
So, but that and it's better than the 1,000 that was initially coming out, but it far exceeds the 12 parts per trillion for surface water, correct?
No, the answer is 4 nanograms per liter is 4 parts per trillion. Unless somebody wants to correct me.
I think you're right.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next up, we had Aaron Weed had a hand raised as well.
Yes, I just wanted to make it clear, Mr. Gibson, that the issue is not that you guys haven't put treatment systems in. The issue is that you haven't put enough in and covered enough of the contaminated plumes within a reasonable amount of time. My other question is regarding the effectiveness of the current treatment systems. I would like to know how well they're handling PFHXS. So I hope that kind of clears it up there about our concerns of the treatment, because you guys are utilizing old infrastructure when really new infrastructure should have been installed and covered a much larger mass.
All right. The systems are deemed operational, so I cannot say that they've passed their lifetime of operation. As far as treatment of chemicals, if you look at the slides there, the PFHXS was less than 4 nanograms per liter. We can have at the upcoming RAB more of the influent concentrations shown, but they're coming in, let's say it's 200 parts per billion. When it comes out the other end, it's non-detect.
Okay, I see that the central does not address PFHXS and nor does FTO2.
And that's because the SRD does not require those to be reported, but the data is provided to Eagle for all the compounds that are analyzed for.
Okay. Is that did that answer your question, Mr. Weed?
No, not really, because I haven't seen that data.
Okay.
So would you like an action item or?
Email the data to me or something, that's all. Something simple.
Okay. Beth, that the data that's on, that goes in, is that the MPART site or what? I'm not, the Mill Waters maybe?
It goes into the My Water site through our Water Resources division, and then the full list we are emailed.
Right, and that's only available to Eagle personnel?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So I'll take an action item for myself to provide the, Mr. Weed, do you want all reports since the start of the systems for all analyses? Do you want a representative set of analyses from the past month?
For 2020 is good.
And you'd like that for all 3 plants?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We also had a, let me get my list here. Matthew Seiler had a hand raised or a comment.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I'm with Water Resource Division for Eagle, and I just wanted to note that on the slides, it gives flow rates in gallons per minute. And I just wanted to clarify, those flow rates just represent what flows you're running through there. It doesn't represent the maximum flows that you can push through there. Is that accurate? Because I know the central treatment system is able to pump 1,040 gallons per minute, but you guys are only pumping 250 gallons per minute.
You're correct that the numbers are what they're actually pumping, and what they're designed to pump is in some instances greater, yes.
Okay. So increasing the pumping rate could increase the removal of PFAS.
Well, increasing pumping rate should, yes, result in a expanded capture zones and more PFAS compounds removal. That's correct.
And Water Resource Division has been pushing to have those flows increased. And maybe as an action item, we'd like to see you, have you discuss plans to increase the flow rates. There is plans to install additional wells to increase the capture zone. And I guess my concern would be that we don't want to see those flow rates go down any further. If anything, we want to see them go up. And one more item is, can you indicate what the maximum flow rates are for the Mission and Central Treatment System are?
I don't have that handy right now, so I'd rather go ahead and make an action item to send that or include that in the minutes than to make a wild guess.
That's fine, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Arnie, I saw you had your hand up, but then you submitted a question. Is that, you still need to wait, or is this, yeah?
Well, one thing I just want to say for a point of order for the RAB is that when information is shared between the Air Force or any of the agencies and any of the stakeholders, it should be shared. If it's brought up during the RAB meeting, it should be shared with the full RAB, because it'll cut back, it'll inform us, number one, and we'll learn from, but also more importantly, it'll be part of the record so that we and future RAB members will have the benefit of it, and we'll move forward faster in getting these issues addressed if we're sharing information. So I just want to throw that out. So I'm pretty sure it should be an AI, an action item for the RAB full. And if not, then we should have a discussion with the two co-chairs. Thank you.
Arnie, I would be sending out any information to the full RAB team or including them in the minutes, or, whether it goes in a separate package to the RAB members or in the minutes, one way or the other, but everybody would see the reply.
Okay, but by signing it as an AI, then the co-chairs and the community RAB get a chance to look at it before it becomes final and an action item. And it may be answer that one question, but there's another one that's significantly related to it that you could answer at the same time, and we have a much better view of what's going on. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Okay, so what you're saying is we need to make the sending of the 2020 effluent test results that Mr. Weed brought up, that needs to be action item. And then the request from Mr. Seiler about what are the design flow rates for each system needs to be an action item. Okay.
Well, what I'm saying, David, is a lot of these detailed requests actually are so related that there should be one action item with sub bullets of these things and answers and so forth. Otherwise, we're going to drive ourselves crazy. But at least we should have a way of communicating and sharing the information in a wider realm of requesters.
Right, and I suggested the minutes, and you've recommended action items. So I will be creating action items, and you'll see that in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We also had a comment or a question from Mark Henry.
Well, while I was sitting here, I received an email from Eagle saying that 7 PFAS compounds that they now have promulgated MCLs for them. Is the effluent testing from the current treatment systems analyzing for these compounds? And I'm sure Eagle has told you that these are coming down the pipe. And is the current treatment system effective in removing these compounds?
I don't have the information in front of me, so I'll make that an action item to identify the MCLs recently promulgated by Eagle and to assess the analyses that are included in the current suite of lab methods, address those 7, and what the resulting concentrations are after treatment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Wursterbarth, also, you had a comment or a question?
Yes, this is Kathy. I do have a question. Since we're talking about the pump and treat systems, it's a sore subject for me, but I'm curious because I've never asked a question directly, but is it or was it ever a liability reduction strategy of the U.S. Air Force to pump the PFAS contaminants out of the ground and place them into area surface waters in order to reduce the volume of contamination on the base property? And if it wasn't, why were the contaminants, or why were the pumps continuing allowable to be pumped?
Well, Kathy, if I could clarify, are you saying that in 2012, PFAS identified as a chemical of concern or something we would look at, and Air Force had systems treating volatile organic compounds, And are you saying, did we allow those treatment systems to continue to treat VOCs, but discharge the effluent without officially addressing PFAS? Or are you
Correct.
saying, why
No,
did,
you knowingly discharged into the area surface water.
and again, you're talking about prior to 2015 and FTO2 coming on board, you mean, or?
Well, no, as you noted here, the others were functional without treating them, or continued to run without being treated after 2015.
Okay, are continuing to run without treatment after 2015.
Excuse me, this is Steve Termath. Since that's a historical question, let me help out there. First of all, it was never a strategy of the Air Force to intentionally pump those out as a way of reducing liability and to capture that. What we did do is you have a decision that had to be made is, first of all, those systems were put in for the control of trichloroethylene. So we were working under requirements to operate those systems for trichloroethylene. Upon the passage of the state having the discharge criteria into surface water, when that went into effect, the Air Force then put on the carbon treatment systems that were on those on the Mission Street and what is now the Central Treatment Plant, which had the Aero Street and benzene plants on it. So we responded to those requirements for surface water discharge with those systems. So it was never a strategy to just pump it and ignore it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you. Looks like we have one more question from Rex Vaughn. You submitted it to this questions box. Do you want to wait till after, or is it addressing for this particular?
Well, it seems to be relevant that if you could answer that question now.
Okay.
About 17 minutes after the meeting started, Eagle kicked out a press release about 5:17 announcing the formal adoption of the MCLs for the 7 PFAS compounds. And looks like it'll be there's a certain amount of time before they actually become law, but they've passed all the hurdles, and it's now going to be Michigan state law on maximum containment limits for those compounds, which means it's going to have a big impact on what's going on at Wurtsmith. So my questions is, and since you've been knowing this is coming, what impact is now this promulgation going to have on the Air Force's obligations to the Wurtsmith area? And like they did in New Hampshire, is the Air Force going to try to use the courts to delay the implementation of MCLs in Michigan?
Well, let me first start off myself. We have previously the groundwater cleanup criteria from Eagle, 70 part per trillion for PFOS, PFOA, and Michigan's cleanup criteria, the GSI, are both accepted by DOD as potential ARARs. My understanding of how the MCLs will work, the promulgation of these MCLs now goes to DOD. Air Force is a category of DOD. Goes to DOD to determine if they're going to be considered a potential ARAR. So I don't know if I would describe it as litigation, but there is a process that for every promulgation of criteria goes to DOD to be approved as a potential ARAR. And so I would say that these new MCLs will follow the same process for other previous criteria that have come out.
Well, in New Hampshire, the Air Force ended up going to court to try to stop the implementation on some of the stuff around Ps, as I understand it. I'm just wondering, is that the strategy of the Air Force to do the same at Wurtsmith now that a very stringent set of MCLs have become law?
Again, I apologize. This is Steve Termath, if I can tackle that. First, a little bit of clarification. The Air Force did not go to court at all over the New Hampshire requirements. That was a manufacturer that went to court and did that. And so, you know, the Air Force did not take any legal action to try and get out of that. It was done by a manufacturer. Second thing is, with regard to the MCLs, as David said, that goes to the Office of Secretary of Defense, and they will determine if it's immediately applicable or ARAR or whatever, but they will pass that down. And the reason we rely on them to do that is because they want consistency of the Army, Navy, and Air Force for all installations within the state of Michigan, so that we're all on the same sheet of music with how we use the state requirements that are passed. So we don't have a choice on that. That's something we have to wait on that Office Secretary of Defense position.
Does that answer your question?
So can you do it in the kitchen?
Yes, it does.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we had, looks like Artie, you have a hand up. Is that a question for the end, or is this something to address this last set of slides we went through?
Just came up. So just that written one will just the record. Regarding the MCLs and the applicable rules and regulations that have to be done as part of the RI, that's a process that could take up to more than 2 years to finalize that. We have been, earlier we were talking about the interim mitigation actions. As a minimum, a request that the Air Force include as their design and interim mitigation efforts to design and agree to install, that you discuss in those designs the capability to meet the groundwater impacts and new groundwater that will become state rules when these MCLs are effective, so that you don't waste time with your contractors having to go back in 2 years, number one. And number two, you may be able to commit in those interim mitigation actions compliance with a new upcoming concentration, and save all of us in our environment better control. So that's an action item. And a response if someone wants to just give us a quick.
No, thank you for your question, Artie.
Okay, thank you. Let's move forward with the next presentation. Next, please. Next slide. All right, back to you, Dave.
All right. So the fire training 2 in April 2015, the time critical removal action. A couple of points here is that there was an existing health advisory at that time of 200 part per trillion of PFOS and 400 part per trillion for PFOA. And so there was a design here of 7 extraction wells and GAC treatment, infiltration galleries where the effluent after the GAC treatment went in back into the groundwater. And it had effluent criteria of 40 and 20 nanograms per liter, respectively. So that's been working operational. Next slide. This figure is I threw in here so you could get a little bit of background. My arrow won't work here, but if you look at the black dot there at the top of that, looks like kind of like an eye. That's the fire training pit. And you go further down to this red square box. That's where the wells are installed to monitor the effectiveness of the system. You've got the bright blue, I guess it is, or the Tar Heel blue building. That's the treatment plant. There's an air sparging curtain, those red and white wells there. And then you've got this, the line of, I think it's 7, 8 wells that are pumping out, going into one pipeline, goes into the plant. And that's the main groundwater extraction zone there. And then you've got the bright green dashes at the bottom. Those are the infiltration areas, groundwater infiltration zones. So that's just an overview of a treatment system that is still a reasonable technology, reasonable approach to be used today. Next slide. You all may have seen this slide in the past. Maybe avocado might have been a term that was used. It's not blowing up real big here. The main thing is that obviously the red areas, or the red area was a high concentration back in 2015, and over the 5-year period to 2019, that red area has really almost disappeared, and that the plume portion down to the end has really been cut off as far as concentrations in the 10,000 to 100,000 nanograms per liter. So the system was working. The discharge requirements were being met with the system. So this is the time frame for that kind of technology, what the effectiveness has been on minimizing the concentrations. So go to the next slide. So this system and any systems like it that are properly designed and installed are going to have an effect on plumes wherever they're installed, and can cut off migration, go to the source and reduce that source concentration. The system installed in 2015, there's a new health advisory of 70 nanograms per liter. And so the ESI identified that the areas of that 70 nanograms per liter is a larger plume, and so a larger area needs to be addressed. And the ESI recommended a remedial investigation to define what those areas are, to expand the treatment system. Next slide. So any questions on the history of FTO2?
I don't,
okay.
On our end, I didn't see, oh, I'm sorry. We got a Mark Henry.
I have a question. I understand that with your interim remedial action that you're going to be expanding the pump and treat at the fire training area. Well, I think that's great. Cutting off the head of the monster is always a good thing. But the fire training area has been discharging to Clark's Marsh for 50 or 60 years. And there's a significant amount of PFAS mass that is in the sediments in all of the ponds that comprise Clark's Marsh on its way as that water flows to the Asable River. And in fact, the surface water leaving that sequence of ponds contains a considerable amount of PFAS, and it's going, let me say, 20 gallons a minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so there's an ongoing flushing of the PFAS from Clark's Marsh to the Asable River. Are there any plans as part of an interim remedial action to set up something like a passive carbon system that the effluent from Clark's Marsh can pass through so that that contamination isn't dumping into the Asable and out to Lake Huron?
That the remedial investigation would go a long way to telling us if something like that would be beneficial, because the remedial investigation is going to be examining sediment, surface water in that area as well as other areas of the base.
But a passive system could be installed immediately. There's an infrastructure that would allow that right now. The Forest Service has a road all the way to where a passive system would be installed. So I'm not sure how much testing needs to be done, but when I was working for the DEQ in 2010 through 2012, we tested the water and there was a considerable amount of PFAS leaving Clark's Marsh by that route. I don't know if you have a program for monitoring the discharge from that marsh at the weir at the end, but it might be a good idea to do so like right now. And by the time the RI comes about for that portion of the site, you will have a series of time data that would demonstrate that you have an ongoing discharge to the Asable River. And that should be then figured into the plans for an interim remedial action, in my opinion.
Well, thank you for that input, Mr. Henry.
Okay, Aaron Weed, you have a comment, question?
Yeah, Mr. Gibson and Mr. Termath. See, now what Mark Henry just brought up there was the point that's been brought out for a long time in regards to the problem with the remediation you've done up to this point, and that is that it's not in the right locations. You're using old infrastructure. That's where big swaths of contamination are not being taken care of, such as the effluent from the old effluent from the Air Force Base from the wastewater treatment plant has zero remediation that's leaching into that marsh area near Clark's Marsh. Just like he said, Clark's Marsh, leaching it all into the Asable River. You have the central treatment plant, which ignores a huge swath of contamination that is downstream of those extraction curtains. So these are the areas that have got to be taken care of instead of cheaping out on it by using infrastructure that was installed a long time ago for different contamination. Thank you.
Okay. All right, sir. Mr. Weed, I think you said that the Air Force contaminated the wastewater treatment plant. Are you talking about the lagoons, and therefore the lagoons are continuing to be a source of contamination?
No, I'm talking about the effluent that came off the drying beds from when the Air Force was using it.
No, so that from whenever they were closed, there was effluent prior to that went down into the creek or into
Correct.
the marsh. Okay, all right. Well, again, the remedial investigation is going to help us with confirming where the best places are for remedies to be placed. And if there's a benefit to putting an interim remedy in place somewhere with new infrastructure, as well as progressing on toward, final remedies that we can get a ROD signed and monitor its effectiveness over the years. Any other questions?
I didn't see any come in on our end, so we could proceed to the next slide. We're going to go ahead and let's see, we're about an hour and 15 minutes in. I think if everybody wants to take a break, let's do it. Unless somebody, the co-chairs, you guys good with a break right now? Maybe 10 minutes?
It's up to you, Arnie.
If we've got the time in the agenda, we've got a lot of information, so.
Yeah.
Are we ahead of schedule, Malcolm?
Yeah, let me double check here. Okay, we're a little behind. So
cut it to.
Yeah, we'll do a 5-minute. I think that's appropriate.
All right. So we're going to be meeting back at 20 after.
Yep.
What is it? 20 after 6 your time?
Yep. Yep.
All right.
20 after the hour, whatever that may be. Okay. See you guys in a few minutes.
There's about 2.5 minutes remaining in the break.
All righty. Coming back on, we got about everybody online. Give a 30 seconds for everybody to jump back on.
Malcolm, when you bring back on, if I could, 30 seconds.
What's that? I'm sorry?
When you bring us back on, I just want 30 seconds, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
On this topic that we just ended.
You got it. All right. I think we could start now. I think it's been a little bit over 5 minutes. So go ahead, Arnie.
Okay. These last 4 or 5 issues that have been brought up are right on target. And I want to add an action item that will supplement one that was submitted by me 2 years ago. And what I'm asking for is the Air Force and Eagle, within 2 months prior to the next RAB, make a full list of all the potential and actually known either sources or plumes that have been and have not been investigated at the whole base, because sometime in the 2 to 3 years ago, someone in the agencies decided that the ESI phase of CERCLA was not going to be a full base in all potential site and be investigated before finalizing it. And that was done at other sites like Pease, so that their RI start did not have these same issues that we just talked about, that Aaron brought up and Mark and so forth. So let's just capture what the full list is and have a list and a map that shows them so that we're moving forward.
All right, we'll do that.
Okay. Dave, there is that, yeah, I think you're up next. So back to you.
Next slide. So for the next segment, we're going to get more into the RI contract that addresses the remedial investigation and interremedial actions. We talk about the funds. There's been interest in the funds that were, how they're used, and then also the timeline. Next slide. So this slide here with the pie chart is attempting to show the breakdown of funds of the $13.5 million that were allocated to the Air Force for FY20. And 56% of the funds are toward the remedial investigation, and 41% are toward the intermedial actions that will be addressed. And then there's a sliver there of where we have enhanced remedy at FTO2 that we've got to get rid of some PFAS contaminated concrete in order for the remedy to be installed. So some funds went there, or will be. That's not actually awarded yet, but I'm hoping that happens within the month. Let's see. Next slide. So hopefully you all have seen this information before, but the RI is going to delineate this PFAS across the facility from on the whole base. Is it in soil, groundwater, sediment, surface water? It's going to evaluate all the media. It's going to assess the human and ecological risks that due to the concentrations in whatever media are found. And it's going to develop this comprehensive understanding of the fate and transport of the PFAS. And those 4 items right there go toward putting in the proper treatment with new facilities as required in the proper places to address the proper media to get the control of PFAS. And then of course the RI is going to be able to implement any interim remedial actions when necessary. Next slide. So the first part of the RI scoping, it's important for the remedial investigation to develop our data quality objectives because without having that firmly agreed to between the Air Force and Eagle in particular up front, when you get the data at the end, they may not be trustworthy and acceptable, and therefore any findings aren't trustworthy and acceptable. We've got to update the existing conceptual site model in order to make sure that we're out designing either the placement of these monitoring wells or placement of additional groundwater extraction units, that we're going to be placing them properly. And one of the steps of that conceptual site model is update the groundwater model. Those are early upfront activities that will be happening here over the next month or so. Then we're going to get into the site characterization. In the past, we've been monitoring wells, just kind of finding where the plume is, but now we're going to be installing wells for the strict purpose of showing if PFAS has migrated to that point. So these Sentinel well programs. And by having that Sentinel well program and having shown through, I think it was at least 6 quarters of monitoring off base, wells are used for drinking water. We're going to go to the Sentinel well program. Let's see. We're going to be, thank you. collecting groundwater samples, soil samples, surface water samples, sediment samples throughout the base. Again, we're not focusing on particular areas. And then also assessing the impact of PFAS in the vadose zones. Next slide. And the RI includes the human health and the ecological risk assessments. Those the toxicologist risk assessors getting involved at that point based upon the results of the ground truth data in the various media. And finally, the RI includes the intermediate actions themselves. Next slide. So the planned intermediate actions first are to address the plume that's impacting Van Etten Lake. If you go back and look at the ESI report and look at those plume maps, Van Etten Lake there by Air Force Beach is an opportunity point to look at. So the RI will be looking at determining the location of those extraction wells. You know, it's a 3D location, and installing new wells, and then installing additional treatment for that additional flow of extracted water. And the second one is the FTO2, again, determining through design, the updated water monitoring, et cetera, groundwater model, et cetera, looking at new locations of wells, installing additional treatment, and expanding the infiltration gallery there. Next slide. So hopefully everybody understands that a construction project can have things that get in the way, but you know, for us to get to the point of actually placing wells and building the building, we've got to actually finalize the project requirements. So the contractors will be developing that, those design information, addressing the wells, how to run the pipes from the wells into the treatment facility, the new treatment facility, infrastructure, et cetera. Then we've got to go through the proposed plan and interim ROD stage that has to be reviewed by Eagle and the public. And there's that design review period. And of course, there's a right of way and access to property that's no longer Air Force property, but has been leased or deeded or is U.S. Forest Service property. Weather is always a potential impact. And then who knows what COVID-19, if it's still around at that time. But all these things together are go toward, we're not going to be digging dirt next month. Next slide. Any questions on the RI and the IRA information?
Okay. Let's see. I think we had. Let me look at the list here. Okay, Mark Henry, you had something on this?
I did. Dave, you had a pie chart that showed where expenditures were going. You had a little sliver there for removal of the concrete pad at FT2. Back when I did a lot of aerial photography analysis of Wurtsmith Air Base because I was heavily involved in Wurtsmith back then. And it appears from aerial photographs that Fire Training Area 2 was used for about a decade prior to the concrete pad being placed there and the piping that ultimately went to the wastewater treatment plant. So there is very likely a significant source underneath that concrete in the vadose zone that if you remove the concrete and do nothing with, will be flushed into the aquifer, and then you'll spend a lot more to remove it with activated carbon than dig and haul. I would recommend that when you're allocating your budget, that you have a significant amount of funding available for removing that pad. It has been sort of neglected over the last 2 decades because of the belief that there is a significant source area, both VOCs and PFAS, underneath that pad. So once again, I would recommend that you not just remove it, that you actually remove it and dig out any contaminated soil as soon as you can once that concrete umbrella has been removed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. The current contract with Bay West already includes an interim or an remedy enhancement at FTO2 to address that source beneath the pad. And what is preventing that remedy from being installed is the concrete pad. So we have funds. The contractor wants the the concrete pad cannot be demolished and then just left on site. So we had to leave the pad in place until this mod could occur to allow the disposal of the concrete. So once the mod is completed or awarded, then the contractor can proceed with demo, proceed with hauling off, and proceed with the work that's already on their contract to address that source beneath the pad. So I think this is good news and finally getting it done. And the contract has a period of performance in it. It's still possible to get through to complete this remedy to address that source before the end of the contract. So I'm hoping that I've successfully answered your question, that we are addressing that source by removal and disposal of the pad and having it already on contract to install that remedy.
What is that remedy, please?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is take an action item to provide the details of that as part of the minutes, or we'll take an action item and we'll provide the details of the remedy to the RAB.
Real quick, don't mean to butt in here. This is Malcolm again. I have a question. Congressman Kildee needs to, he had asked to make a public comment at the end of the meeting like everyone else. However, he needs to get off the meeting for a bit for a phone call. Is that okay if he makes his comments now? This is a question for the RAB members and Arnie and Dave. Is that okay? And
This is Arnie. Yes, it is okay.
That's fine. That's okay.
Okay. And I will open it up to Congressman Kildee. The floor is yours for a few minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was my intention to participate in the public comment section, but my schedule is pretty tight today. So, and I know you've all been really working on this. So let me just take a couple of minutes and again, tell you how much I appreciate the chance to make a few comments. You know, I represent Oscoda. I'm proud to represent Oscoda. I love the community. It's part of my childhood, so I feel a real connection. And we know what happened there. The firefighting foam containing PFAS, you know, has had an impact leaching into the groundwater, drinking water, groundwater wells. And I've been working really hard to deal with it since I came to Congress. I've been working with the people there in Oscoda. Particularly the organization Need Our Water. They deserve a lot of credit for being tireless and bringing this public health threat to the public's attention, because it's made a difference not only in terms of our ability to get things done in Oscoda, but it's made a difference for the whole country. And we do need to hold folks accountable. One of the things I did was I co-founded the Congressional PFAS Task Force, which is a bipartisan task force to bring Republicans and Democrats together to address this health threat. My partner in forming the caucus is a Republican from Pennsylvania, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. He also has problems in his district, and that's the way this has come to us. 3 months ago, I spoke during a RAB meeting and expressed that I was disappointed that not much had changed for the people of Oscoda. The Air Force has not, I don't think, taken the urgency that we are insisting upon to deal with cleaning up these chemicals. I'm concerned that we do continue to focus more on studies than cleanup. And while the Air Force has announced plans to increase cleanup efforts around Clark's Marsh. Obviously, we support that, but that's not enough. Air Force Beach, Lake Van Etten, is no threat. It's a public health threat and it needs to be addressed. And we know enough, I think, to have it addressed. The recently submitted expanded site inspection, it does call for more studies. And I can't be against studies, but when I am there fighting for money to clean it up, I want to see more of that. We know that a substantial endangerment exists. There's a health advisory for the foam on Van Etten where people swim and people fish. There are health advisories for deer, for fish, for small game in Clark's Marsh in the Ausable River. The letter, the February 25th, 2020 letter from Air Force Secretary Barrett indicates there are $13.5 million referenced for cleanup of the former base. The letter mentioned that the money can be used for construction or expansion of additional treatment systems if needed. So I ask, and this is just my 2 cents, it's a lot more than 2 cents, $13.5 million. I ask that the majority of that money be used for cleanup. That was the congressional intent. The facts show that there is an imminent and substantial danger. I'm asking the Air Force to act. This is the intent of Congress. This is what Congress funded. And the people of West Dakota deserve that. So I appreciate you adjusting your schedule to allow me to say those things. It's something I feel really strongly about. And thank you again. And the people there in the community of West Dakota, keep it up. You're on the right side. So thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
I'll be reading into the minutes at the end during the Q&A, the paragraph from Secretary Barrett's letter talking about the use of the funds. I'll wait till that period. Next slide.
Okay, thank you. We still had, going back to the previous presentation, we had a couple of hands raised.
Oh, okay.
And I think I got, let's see, Mark Henry, we got you. The next one in line was Mr. Bill Gaines. You sent in the question. Do you want to ask it or do you want me to read it or?
I would go ahead and ask it.
Okay.
The responses to some of our questions from the last RAB meeting said that Mr. Gibson was not aware of criteria for cleanup for things other than water. In other words, criteria for cleanup of fish, criteria for cleanup of venison. I don't understand how you're really going to do that ecological and human health risk assessment effectively without some kind of wildlife consumption criteria. We've shared some. I know that MDHHS has criteria. I've discussed that criteria with them. I would make the point that the mean fish in the Ausable, the mean bluegill in the Ausaba is 250 parts per trillion. There's a do not eat advisory on that. But if you ate an 8-ounce serving of that fish, it would be the equivalent of drinking 1.5 liters of water a day for a year and 4 months with 70 parts per trillion. That's based on the fact that 1 nanogram of PFAS is 1 part per trillion of a kilogram. And a kilogram and a liter are the identical things. So I would like to know what kind of criteria are going to be used for the human health risk assessment on wildlife consumption. MDHHS has some, so that would be a source.
Thank you, Bill, for that input. The purpose of the RI is one of the purposes to examine those criteria and provide that back to Eagle for their review to confirm that the Air Force is using the proper data.
That would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay. Let me see here. We had Sorry, I have to scroll back through here. Mr. Bill Gaines. And then we had Artie, you had a hand raised.
Just real quick, just to supplement what Bill said, in the last meeting, I brought up that EPA provided the Pease Air Force Base in November of 17 criteria for human health risk screening for fish and for dermal, and there was a whole list, and I gave that to the Air Force in November of 2018, almost 2 years ago. And that was not understood, or Dave, you said that you do not know of any other criteria like that. And I was wondering, since then, are you looking into that criteria, and can it be brought into the discussion of at least combining and compiling all the data that the state has taken on wildlife, and at least do a screening, and then you'll do the assessment in the RI. So that's my suggestion to finish that topic.
Okay. I'll work on my responses now, in that I am glad to say that even though I personally don't have the expertise or knowledge of the various things that have been talked about on the allowable limits in fish and deer, and what are the P's or New Hampshire requirements for various things, we're hiring a highly qualified contractor. We have hired one with Aerostar that has the expertise. So I am not the expert that's driving all the aspects of the contract. And we have hired a team. So they have hydrogeologist, geologist, toxicologist, chemists, all the expertise to bring forward to looking at this, looking at Wurtsmith Air Force Base and the components that I've shown here with the remedial investigation, which includes all those areas. They have the expertise. They're going to be based upon all the existing knowledge, looking at placement of new wells as required, and then coming up with recommendations and moving into feasibility studies, as well as what are the proper placements of these expansions of the system to address Air Force Beach and Clark's Marsh. So I'll try to watch how I say things and say just that, I'm not personally aware. Thank you for that input. The contract will be looking at those factors, and they'll be incorporated. Any other questions there?
Yes, we had Kathy Wusterbarth.
Hi, yep, Kathy Wusterbarth. I want, because part of this, the remedial actions include the Van Etten Lake plume. I want to repeat, and for those who may have not have heard, maybe new people in this, the RAB meetings, the Need Our Water top priority statement, which is to have the Air Force stop the flow of Wurtsmith PFAS contamination into all Oscoda area surface water by no later than 2023, including remediation with the utmost speed and urgency of the PFAS plumes impacting Van Etten Lake. Now, with the description of the remedial actions here in the agenda, we don't think that this remedial action provides any assurance that the plume at the beach will be cleaned up. What assurance do we have that these measures will directly clean up the plumes?
Well, you're asking two questions there. One, you're saying now has a goal of achieving stopping all migration from the base by 2023. So there's that aspect. You're saying you're not seeing that happening based upon our timeline. And now,
no, we did report that at the last RAB meeting. So
right, but your question right now, you pointed out again that that's now's goal, stop all migration by 2023. Then you said you don't think it's going to happen, and then you added on, what assurances does now have that the plume will be cleaned up? And I'm not sure if you're saying cleaned up by 2023 or cleaned up period.
No, addressing the plume affecting the beach.
You're saying what assurance does now have that the Air Force will be addressing the plume to Air Force Beach under this RI?
That's right.
Well, that's our goal. I think let's see, did we look at my slides here, if we've already addressed it or if we're going to be addressing it.
Under the interim measures.
Yeah, I thought we already addressed that with Van Etten Lake, and Air Force Beach is where the hotspot is on Van Etten Lake. And as far as assurances that it's going to be cleaned up, all I can say at this point is that is a point at which we want to address to all extent possible under this current contract. We'll have to see after the design of what's doable, and but again, the goal is to stop migration of all PFAS off base, and one of the intermediate actions is Van Etten Lake in the Air Force Beach area.
And what is that going to happen as an interim measure, or?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Mike Munson, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm basically looking at the slides. I see, and bless the Air Force's heart, they are looking at something other than water as far as contamination, i.e. the pad and that ground, which is great. I think they're being proactive. However, we were involved here about a year ago doing a runway resurface. And what we did is we took material that was after the Air Force left, took it off and moved it off site. You would not believe the questions we got that we were taking away contaminants and putting it in somebody's backyard. Well, here's a case where we are taking contaminants, or the Air Force is taking contaminants, and they're moving it someplace. I can tell you right now that's going to be a PR nightmare because no one wants it in their backyard. So my point being, we need to think about processing the stuff on site. Now, maybe we got to go hire some scientists to figure this out, but I can tell you right now, if you're going to take that stuff out, whether it be concrete or dirt, and move it someplace else other than the base, you're going to have a problem. And if you put it on the base, what have you done? You haven't done anything. So that's something you need to think about.
Mr. Munson, if we are able to legally dispose of the concrete at a regulated site, are you saying we're not free to do that?
I'm not saying you're not free. It's just if you start driving the stuff around off the base, you're going to get people concerned. I can tell you that right now, because we had a kind of a PR nightmare when we moved just some asphalt material to an area that they reprocessed it. There was no PFAS in it because it was the runway resurface was done after the Air Force left, and it was above all that stuff. But just a PR nightmare you're going to have is going to be something you need to think about.
Well, I guess I'd like to hear more from you after the RAB. Could you send me some kind of information about what the PR nightmares are? Because I haven't heard of following the law for disposal of anything now is a problem.
Okay, well, it's about 3 or 4 RABs ago, I got attacked by local people saying we were removing PFAS material off the airport. So it was a verbal confrontation. I'm just saying that you better make sure you got all your ducks in a row, and maybe you guys have it in line, but I know we had an issue.
We are following all the Michigan and US EPA requirements for disposal of materials.
Okay, maybe it won't be an issue, but I'm just reverting what we had in.
And this is Steve Termath. This is Steve Termath, and I apologize. I'm going to add on to that. Not only are we following the law, but by policy within the Department of Defense and the Air Force, we are treating anything like that as a minimum as a hazardous waste. And right now, most regulations do not consider it a hazardous waste, but we are by policy treating it as a hazardous waste and making sure that we go a step above and beyond to make sure that wherever we take it, we're not creating a problem or a legacy problem that's just going to surface in the future.
Okay,
And in
all
some
right. I
cases-
mean, it sounded like you got your ducks in a row, and I'm glad for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we had one more. We had Mr. David Wynn.
Yes, my question is relative to the RI investigation. I noticed you mentioned in here that the RI investigation was part of Wurtsmith. My question is, and this has come up in many, many previous meetings before, and it's been a bone of contention, is that we are of the understanding that the remedial investigation will not only take care of the base, but also areas such as like the east side of Van Etten Lake, which has never been looked at before. So my question is, how far does the remedial investigation span out to? Does it include the east side of Van Etten Lake? Does it include Cedar Lake? Does it include areas over by Lake Huron? What does it include?
Well, the generic answer would be if the Air Force is responsible for a plume, then we have to take care of that plume. I believe last night during the briefing from Eagle, it was stated, clarified, presented that any PFAS existence on the east side of Van Etten Lake and Clear Lake that is not related to any operations at Wurtsmith Air Force Base. So while there may be PFAS in that area, it's not been shown to be resulting for the Air Force, and therefore we would not be addressing it.
Okay, so I have a problem with that. But my problem is that we have been told by Eagle many, many times, and I think people on this call, Eagle knows, we've been told and we've been asking about the remedial investigation. We were told by Eagle is that the remedial investigation would cover those areas. So I'm being told now that they're not. So that is a problem. In Eagle, you guys know exactly who I'm talking about.
Beth, Mr. Neller, do you all want to have any information for
Yeah,
Mr. Wynn?
Sorry, I had my hand up. Mike, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Okay. So yeah, during the remedial investigation, Eagle will be asking the Air Force to determine the nature and also the extent. So how far the PFAS compounds have traveled from the base. And so that is where we may get into that eastern side of the lake. We've also, so it depends on how far the PFAS has traveled and to what level that we agree we are looking at. And so Air Force, through the RI, will have to determine that extent of contamination down to the agreed upon level. Then also, we've also talked about, you've heard our CSM presentation from last night. Now, some of that near shore contamination on the southeastern side of Van Etten Lake, we're not sure exactly where that's from. From our transducer study, we have seen some. It's possible it's from some back and forth action from Van Etten Lake, and so contamination from the base is venting into Van Etten Lake, and then that near shore action on the eastern side may be contributing to some contamination, but there's still some gaps that we're not quite sure where that near shore contamination is coming from. Does that help clear it up, Dave? Wynn?
Yeah, so I think again, and I'm requesting this of Arnie and Dave. I would expect an action assignment for someone to sit down and determine what the extent of that RI investigation is going to occur, because right now I'm not comfortable that it's going to cover anything except the base. So I would like an action. I would hope, Arnie, as far as community RAB, that you guys would list an action assignment that determines what the extent of that RA investigation is going to entail, along with Eagle, because I'm hearing two different things right now.
That's fine to have an action item, and there will be an RI work plan that'll describe the extent of the RI. And that will be reviewed by Eagle and made available to the RAB.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Rex Vaughn. Do you have a question?
Are you unmuted?
Rex? Are you muted, Matt, Rex?
Rex, you could unmute.
Can you guys see if he's muted or not?
He's not.
Okay.
Are you guys trying to get a hold of Rex?
Yeah, I believe he had a question or a comment.
Oh, yeah. I was just wanting to know the name of the, who was the successful bidder for the RI contract?
Aerostar.
Pardon me, what was that?
Aerostar.
Aerostar, okay.
AEROSTAR. They're the current contractor working the Mission Street expansion to the GAC.
Okay. Are they going to be are they going to be a general, or are they subbing it at all? Sure, there'll be some subs going on in that, won't there?
It's a team, includes subcontractors, yes.
Okay, but they're the general.
They're the prime, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bill Gaines, do you have a question?
I made a comment, and you can just address that comment. Beth actually covered the same thing when she said that there was a lot of ambiguity on the southeast corner of Van Etten Lake.
You know, oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. This is Beth again.
Okay.
You know, one thing I should have mentioned, though, that from our transducer study in our CSM, that we did not see, based on the information that we collected, and there are a few data gaps in our study, but we did not see that flow from the western side of Van Etten Lake was flowing beneath of Van Etten Lake and coming out on the other side in groundwater. So that's a main point that we wanted to get across with our CSM presentation. It's that kind of nearshore interaction that we're not quite sure about over there on the southeastern side.
Yes, I think the briefer actually pointed out that Clear Lake is topographically higher than Van Etten Lake.
Yes, Cedar Lake. Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Any more questions, Malcolm?
Yeah, let's see. I believe we have Arnie. Do you have your question?
No, that question can just be for the record. Regarding the last conversation, is it not the Air Force's responsibility in their conceptual model to investigate any potential, including that east side?
Well, again, I believe the answer to that was if there's shown to be a hydraulic connection, some type of evidence that operations at Wurtsmith Air Force Base are connected hydraulically to the east side of Van Etten Lake, well, I think we would.
Well, but even your Gillespie, your hydrologist, admitted to me a year ago in the RAB meeting that throat of soil in the southeast corner of the lake, historically, geologically, over a few thousand years, and Eagle even showed on their map last night that there was a river delta that did right at the shoreline of the southeast, that 20, 30, 40 feet down, that hasn't been evaluated by Eagle nor the Air Force. So that's a concern of ours. And it's the Air Force's responsibility as the site circular party to investigate that.
Let's just say there will be a CSM and there'll be the evaluations necessary to cause us to investigate areas. And as far as this, if we call it eastern side of the lake or Lake Huron or Clear Lake or Frank's Pond upgrade of the base, let's see what the CSM says, the groundwater modeling, and let the investigation occur, and everyone will see exactly where we intend to look. It'll be clear as to where we're going.
And we'll know that in a timeline that we can influence the final decision on whether or not an investigation in that area will be done. We'll have time to comment.
The RAB will have an opportunity to know what the Air Force is doing, yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you. We got
requested Dave Wynn.
What was that last question, Arnie?
Dave Wynn, in his statement, asked that it be an action item. So I suggest to Dave that we add it.
Yes. Action item, what is the extent of the RI? That's correct.
For the southeast side. Okay.
Okay, we got to move on. We have one more question, then we have to move on to the next section, just because we're pressing up against that 1 hour for the Q&A section. But I mean, I want to keep the questions going and answers, so don't want to eat up too much into that. Jeff, you had a question or a comment?
No, sir, I'm good.
Yes, hi, this is Martha Gottlieb. I'm sitting in for Jeff. He had to step away while we were waiting here. But,
okay.
and I don't understand, and I used to be an alternate as well. So somebody was responding to Kathy's remark, and I don't know who it was, or he didn't know who it was, but they said that's our plan to stop the flow and to all extent possible under the contract. So Jeff's comment is when he said that's our plan, excuse me, I was at the rally today. That's our plan. What are the details of that plan? It says that's our plan to stop the flow. We'd like to see the details. And that was one of our #1 priorities like 10 years ago. So to hear again, that's our plan is really disconcerting to hear that. I would like you to share the details of your plan to stop the flow, like dates, details, who's doing it, who's on that, who's a dedicated project manager. And then when they said to all extent possible under this contract, can you share a copy of that contract? That actually makes us a little bit nervous, to the extent possible. So we have a flow of toxins into our rivers and Van Etten Creek, and you're saying to the extent possible. That is just not acceptable. This is an ethics issue in my eyes. Again, if it was a private company and you were flowing toxins knowingly, that would end. So when you say stopping the flow to all the extent possible, that is not acceptable. It is, we need to stop the flow. That's our #1 priority. Stop the bleeding. That is my comment. Thank you.
Okay, I won't provide any responses. Any other questions? I guess we'll move on.
No, let's move on, please. Next slide.
So you're going to respond when? I'm sorry.
Ma'am, you said that that's your comment, and so I thought that you were just making a statement.
Well, I'm making a statement, but in that statement was, what are you going to do? So will you have that in your notes? Are you going to provide the contract and the plan you have?
No, we'll provide the contract, but what the RAB will be seeing is a detailed schedule, first off, that shows when things would happen. And then there's going to be a design developed to address Air Force Beach that through that design and based upon the resources we have today, we can always look for more funds next year, but with the resources right now, how much of Air Force Beach can be addressed? So you will be seeing the details of that. You will be seeing the results of what we think we can do or what we're going to do, and then what we think will be the end result of that interim action. So you will be seeing action taken for Air Force Beach, Van Etten Lake. You will be seeing when it will occur, and you'll be seeing, again, what our expectation is of how much of that plume can be addressed at this time. And then based upon further information, we can get to maybe a final remedy that defines the full scope and intent of a remedy there and get to a ROD.
Okay, can I ask one more question? You said we'll see how much of this can be addressed at this time. What's the gating factor? Is it money? What is it?
We haven't completed the RI to complete the well-defined design requirements. And so we're going in now with, using color maps and measuring distances and going to do the best we can with that limited information. So we have limited information. I know that people think we have all the information we need, but the wells have to go at particular depths. Is it 20 feet or 30 feet or 35 feet? That makes a difference. How much is pumped out? How much water can be pumped out? So because we don't have all the information to go through a complete design, we therefore are in interim mode. And we will find out once we look at Aerostar's design, we'll see what we think can happen, and how interim is this interim? How limited is it? I can't define that for you right now.
Okay, so after these 10 years, what have we been doing? How come that information isn't available? I'm just curious. I just don't get it. I don't understand why. I'm just nervous because it's like, well, we're formulating our plan. We don't have all the information. It's continued to flow for years and it's not stopped. What's going to stop it? What can we do? How can we help you be successful? We just want to work together as a team. I just don't get it.
Well, the big thing is to understand the circle process that was implemented by Congress and then defined and designed and developed by US EPA, that the intent is to provide transparency, the intent is to allow public participation, and the intent is to move on through the process with well-defined information to make sure that the federal government and DoD are being good stewards of resources. So yes, something's been worked on for 10 years. We are in the RI phase. And if you're not familiar with the phases of CERCLA, then we can hold training on the CERCLA process.
No, I don't want any training. I just want action. I'm sorry, I sound frustrated, but you can imagine what this is like. Is Van Etten Lake, is it supposed to be interim, not final? Van Etten Lake is supposed to be interim, not final, right?
Well, by definition, because we have not completed the remedial investigation and a feasibility study, it is interim. It'll be great news if we guess right, and it turns out that, wow, we happen to stumble upon the answer that the RI proves and the feasibility study proves. That'd be wonderful. But we have not completed the RI. We've not gone through a feasibility study. Therefore, I cannot say it's the final answer.
Okay, if I may interject here, we're going to have to move on, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut anybody off. If you do have further questions, please submit them. But in the sake of time, we still have to do some RAB co-chair or some RAB member elections, co-chair elections. So if we could move forward, unless if the RAB members are good with that, let's move forward, please.
Okay, we're going to the RRSE.
Yeah. The next.
This is just an advertisement. Go to the next slide. These are topics that will be addressed in the presentation. I'm not going through them right now, but this will provide all the information needed by the public, the RAB, to understand the worksheets that are developed and to help them provide comments on those worksheets. Next slide. The plan right now is to present the slides to the BCT, and I propose to Barney that we look at next week. We can go, or the first week of August, to set up another go-to meeting to provide the slides to the RAB. And we can talk about it now, but I guess an action I would talk about here right after the meeting, Arnie, is can you agree that AFCAT can set up a go-to meeting with the RAB and the public that want to, just like this RAB meeting here, put out a notice, put out an advertisement to come to the training. And then once that's done, then we can post the worksheet and the information from the RSC to the AR, and then put out a public notice. So I guess in the interest of time, let's just go ahead and add an action item to establish a date and time for that RSC briefing.
Yes, I sent an email to the community RAB a week ago and asked for input on that. I've only received a couple. So I suggest that we do add this as an action item. And unless there's severe opposition for this training on this important issue, that we do go ahead and schedule as you suggested.
Okay, we'll send out a doodle poll soon after, probably by early next week, just so we can get it worked on.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide.
All right.
Any questions on the RSC?
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have can we move for Arnie? I saw you have your hand raised.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, let's move forward, please.
So you all had the slide for a couple of hours. You might have gone through them and you've seen these dates for key milestones for the interim remedial actions and remedial investigation. Are there any questions on these? Again, these are at this point in time, early in the contract. These are again a timeline, but by the next RAB October, there's going to be the detailed schedule showing all components of the RI and the IRAs that you'll see all the details at that time. But they're going to fall within these timeframes here.
Dave, this is Arnie. I'd like to set up an action item to ask the Eagle and the Air Force to help the community RAB know the more detailed schedule that you're making decisions and to share communications back and forth so that this very important phase that we're moving into for interim remedial actions, that the community RAB has more timely tracking and knowledge so that we can answer more of these questions that have been coming up at this meeting and give the opportunity to do so.
Okay, Arnie, if you could send an email to us and put in that email what your question just was or what the action item is.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Any other questions on this slide?
I don't see anything on my end, Dave.
Okay, next slide.
Dave, it's Jeff Moss. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I had pushed the button. I guess it didn't work. But I guess my question is this. You have around $5.5 million of the $13.5 million slated for remedial action of particular projects in the Clark's Marsh area, FTO2, or the Radcliffe Beach and Van Etten Lake area. My question is this: was there any consultation with Eagle as to what projects were priorities of theirs along with priorities of yours to generate remedial actions utilizing the same $5.5 million, or maybe utilizing $7 to $10 million and taking the RI into the fourth quarter of 022? In other words, maybe prolonging the remedial investigation a little longer to satisfy some of the primary remedial actions that Eagle may have focused on their agendas of finding different areas or different priorities than the Air Force's.
Well, I would say that these two intermediate actions are on the list of 4 that came from Eagle.
Okay.
So we're on the same page. This remedial investigation contract allows for additional intermediate actions as deemed necessary. And that Eagle is going to be a partner with us, stakeholder, and supporting us with the design plans, the work plans, the RI plans going forward as to what makes the most sense now or coming up, now that we've got the RI on board.
Okay, but what it sounds like is that they're being told what you're willing to do, and they agree that these things need to be taken care of. So I guess, Mike, I know you're listening, so my question is going to direct to you, Mike. Were you consulted, or have you been able to put forth your priorities on what you'd like to see cleaned up at the Wurtsmith Air Force Base or surrounding areas, along with the Air Force, to take some of this $13.5 million and come together as a team and project this for remedial action inside of the RI?
Jeff, yeah, this is Mike. No, we weren't consulted before they announced the 2 that the Air Force said they're going to undertake initially. Dave is right in that when we saw that, it was 2 of the 4 we had indicated we requested that they be undertaken. So, I mean, whether or not these were the top 2, I mean, we can't really argue with what they chose to do. We wouldn't say, oh, we would have picked this one, and we didn't list them in any sort of priority. I would tell you that, in our estimation, the removal of the beds up by the wastewater treatment plant is the most costly of the actions that we requested be undertaken. And so I understand why that one didn't necessarily, given the resources they have at this time, didn't get picked. But I mean, there wasn't a back and forth about what they were going to do.
So is there, within the CERCLA process, Dave, a way to, instead of communicate inside of the disputes and the issues that we have, is there a way inside of the CERCLA process that the 2 major league parties that are involved in this can be more coordinated, so that as a community, we're seeing the actions of the 2 parties be more teamwork like than adversarial against each other on these particular issues? I mean, we're just looking for some interim action, okay? And what you're choosing are clearly things we've been looking for, but they clearly have primary sites that they'd like to do also. Am I out of bounds in what I'm asking, or? I mean, is it something that may further the community, that the two of you guys are in tighter communication to picking the actions that would benefit our community?
This is Aaron Weed. In other words, are you going to work with the communities who are one of the primary stakeholders in this, or are we going to be left out again?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute when I thought I was answering, but so there's really two questions then, Mr. Moss and Mr. Weed, about AFCEC working with Eagle, and then AFCEC sharing with the community what the plans are. So I can't speak for the past. I know going forward, CERCLA and the process does allow for that to happen because there's going to be work plans developed, whether they're for the designs of the IRA, or if it's going to be the placement of the remedial investigation wells and what media are collected and where, that those documents are going to be made available and reviewed. So there will be communication happening. Yes.
Well, I think that there's communication that does occur, okay? For me, you know, we're getting these at 10 o'clock this morning or 11 o'clock this morning to be able to review it. And I understand that you have a lot of things to coordinate, but I'm trying to determine, after 3 years of looking at these things and being on monthly calls with everybody and trying to understand what's going on, everybody is clear that the communities are extremely frustrated with what's going on. And we have the state of Michigan and we have the Air Force DOD. We hear a particular amount of money that's allocated by our Congress to do remedial actions, and you've allocated some of this money towards that, and you've allocated more of the money towards the investigation, which is exactly what you said would happen, and it has. I guess my question is how do we have more input to allow this funding from the taxpayers to go towards the remedial action that we're looking for to take place here? So but I don't think the $5.5 million is enough money out of the budget.
Let me, if I could, you're getting into what the statements that Mr. Representative Kildee made. I'd like to combine my response to you and him during the comments phase.
Perfect.
Or the Q&A
okay,
phase.
that's
right?
fine.
Thanks.
Yep, I just wanted to be heard about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have time for two more comments or questions. One is for Kathy. We kind of skipped you there, but here, please, now's your time.
Okay, thanks. So under the interim remedial action timeline, and I believe maybe Arnie may have said this, clarified it, but we'd like to see those Benetton Lake plumes remedial actions timelines specified inside of that, please.
You're asking for when will the installation of the additional treatment be applied to Air Force Beach? Is that what you're saying?
Right, that those remedial actions were specified for Benetton Lake. So, and then you have some, there were 2 items that were going to be addressed and under remedial actions. And so we'd like to have those broken out, of course, so that we could see the timeline for Benetton Lake.
Yes, that's what you'll be saying.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And we have Artie.
And will that schedule be at the same time that you send it to Mike Neller at Remediation Division in October?
The process would be to work with Eagle first and then share with the public. But that will happen to give to the public by the October RAB.
I understand, but we need to have better understanding to minimize these repeated questions about this issue, and they're good questions. So I'll be talking with you about an action item and talk to Mike about how we may share some of this with a community RAB so that we can help and do our task with the RAB is to communicate with the communities. We can't do that if we have no information on technical decisions by your two agencies. So it's an action item with the co-chairs should talk about that very soon.
I believe the schedule that you'll be getting in October will answer these questions on the timing, yes.
But that's when you're throwing it out to the public is what you said.
Yes.
We're not just the public. We're here to help the public understand. So we need to understand a little bit before the official public. So we'll chat and see if we can come up with an understanding.
Okay. Any more questions?
All right. No, we don't have anything else that has been come up on our end. But let's move forward. That way we can take care of the RAB business. Next slide. I think you have one more slide, Dave. There you go.
Oh, okay. Long words here. You all have seen it. You can look at it again here. We've got to verify the design parameters. So we are not at this point able to start next week with drilling wells. Okay. You've seen some of the things that have to be done in order to actually drill wells, install wells. And we're going to continue to evaluate if there's additional intermediate actions that need to be done now under this contract as we gather more information. I think that basically says what those two slides are saying. We are going to be working with Eagle to do that, to finalize those plans. So any questions? Is there another, any questions on the conclusions or the timeline? Talked about the timeline. Can we move on to the RAB business or?
Yeah, I had one more question. Jeff and I had a question, just real quick here.
Who is it? Who's speaking?
I'm sorry, this is Martha Gottlieb. You mentioned something, you know, about the circular training process. And again, I went on the flow chart on the site and I see that there's a decision tree, you know, it's the 5th block down. It says, is an immediate or short-term response necessary? And it goes yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, is an immediate short-term response, when you have known toxins that are created by the Air Force, we know that is flowing, known, wouldn't that classify as an immediate short-term response, and that then would initiate Superfund emergency response program? I mean, I'm just saying, like, toxins flowing into our water. I can't think of anything more immediate needed.
Okay, ma'am. If what I'd like to do is, ma'am, is to, I think one part of the solution, besides having separate RAB training on that particular topic, going to delve into the details of that, we can attach to the minutes to the RAB portions of the details of what is a yes or a no, and provide that, you know, for the minutes.
Okay.
And then if that doesn't answer the question, we can, you know, provide some more in-depth, you know, online training or something, or, you know, another RAB. So, but there are criteria, and we can go through that. Just don't have time right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Intuitively, you're just like,
Okay, thank you.
toxins flowing would be immediate to me. So, okay, great. Thank you.
And
Okay, thank you. Let's move forward here.
just ask one quick question though, clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're doing that, last RAB meeting, I asked you to help us understand how you decide in accordance with your Air Force instruction 32-7020, which gives criteria to make that decision of interim controls decisions before the RI even starts, as Martha was alluding to. So please, when you answer that, reference that instructional manual that you have to guide your teams. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move forward with the next slide. Okay, and that's the RAB business. Okay, so we're coming up on next slide, please. Okay, we're coming up on, we have Mr. Robert Hazier, who was with us for several years, the RAB member. He has gone on to other things and will not be serving as a RAB member any longer, and we appreciated his time and his dedication to the RAB. That leaves a vacancy. One of our alternates, Mark, has stepped up and I think is up for the vote. So at this moment, I'd like to let's go ahead and have a vote for Mr. Mark. And I think we have Natasha, we have everything in place to do that. Okay, and there's some instructions there. Again, this is for, I'm sorry, trying to get to my notes here. I apologize, Mark. Well, we're just gonna go ahead, let's see. And I'm sorry, I'm looking for your last name, Mark. I apologize. All these notes in front of me and I'm trying to dig through them.
Henry, Henry.
Okay, easy enough. Sorry about that. Okay, Mark Henry, this is for primary RAB member. Please, RAB members, primary RAB members, please cast your vote. Let us know if you have any questions as you're doing so.
Natasha, suggestion, what, I can't find that voting document.
What do you mean voting document? You put it in the questions box.
I got it. Showed up.
Okay, great.
This is Aaron Weed. Why is there an abstain option?
I don't think there's a real reason for it. Just thrown in there.
So Mr. Weed, are you saying that there is no, you either vote yes or no, or so abstain is not appropriate based upon the O plan, or what?
No, I don't think abstain is appropriate unless it's going to be some sort of personal financial benefit.
Well, let's try and see if we can get 9, or was it going to be 8 yeses and nos first off.
Okay. So for the sake of this vote, then please refrain from using abstain. It's either yes or no. Is that?
This is Jerry Schmidt. I have to ask, my voting box here does not seem to allow me to type in it.
It's the question box.
It's the questions box. What voting box do you mean?
Well, okay, I have a box here with an arrow pointing here, and it says type into the questions. Wait a minute here. Okay, yes and no. How do I guess I don't know how the hell to vote here.
You just type yes or no?
Well, I realize that, but
on the side,
I don't know how to make it register, excuse me.
Yeah, you should have a sidebar, a red arrow on the side of by the side of the screen there. That red arrow, if it's pointing to the left, press it and that'll open up the sidebar.
Okay.
Okay, and now down, you'll see audio, handouts, and questions. And in the questions drop down, there's a space for you to enter information. And that's where you say yes or no.
All right, that's where you want me to put okay, I got you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Then say send.
Yeah, I'm 37 years old, so I don't know how to do all this stuff.
It's good for the brain cells.
Okay.
So Natasha, how are we doing on the count?
We have one more left we're waiting on.
And so this is anonymous, so we're not going to be doing any querying or anything like that.
Does the person, this is Kathy, does the person need prompting to do this?
They just responded. We're doing the tally now.
Okay, thank you.
Are you using new math, Natasha?
I just let Malcolm know the results.
Oh, okay.
All righty, so the results are 8 yes. So
okay.
I believe that that confirms it.
All right. Welcome aboard.
Okay, perfect. Yes, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's up? Okay, so then moving on, the next elections now is for co-chair. We've had the co-chair is up for re-election, and so that opens up the position to any primary members of the community RAB. So in this round, we have Mr. Arnie LaRiche, who has asked to continue. He threw his hat in, and we also have Mark Henry, who also wants to be considered for the co-chair, community co-chair position. So at this moment, I'm going to give. We're going to start out. We're going to give both a couple of minutes to speak and to let the RAB members know why they should be your next community co-chair. So we'll start with Mr. Mark Henry.
I've been involved with Wurtsmith Air Base since about 1998, almost continuously. I have a great love for the surface waters of the state of Michigan. I have worked towards cleanup of those during my whole career with the state. I have a particular love of Clark's Marsh. The fire training area in Clark's Marsh I know intimately. And as such, I feel that a lot more attention needs to be paid to cleaning up those. That is a much more difficult task than cleaning up the plume that is going to Van Etten Lake, which is simply a pump and treat operation in all likelihood, unless some new technology comes about. So during my time as co-chair, I will be pushing towards not only the cleanup of Van Etten Lake, or at least the groundwater impacted by Wurtsmith going into Van Etten Lake, but I will be pushing very hard to keep the ball rolling towards the cleanup of Clark's Marsh. Towards that, the RAB is a perfect opportunity to input into the process, and I know the process very well. So I guess that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have Arnie LaRiche. The floor is yours.
Thank you. 4 years ago, I went to the township and I requested that they put in a request to establish a community RAB and RAB and submit it to the Air Force. There was significant opposition at the board at that time, and so it took me about 4 months. Aaron approached me and he agreed that something needed to change. So I drafted a letter and I gave it to him and he got it passed by the board. So that's the start of the RAB. The RAB is special in that the way it's set up is for technical review and to hold the parties, state and Air Force, to the CERCLA and state rules. It is technical review. We have to be careful not to spend a lot of time talking about health issues and things like that. But activism is great and it's helpful to bring attention, but we have to make sure that we do the work behind the scenes so that we know the science and the decisions of how it's being made. There was one other thing at the beginning of the training that's very important to bring up, and that is the facilitator told us that we are individuals in the community RAB. We do not represent other organizations. So we vote so that we can communicate with the community. My heart is in this, and I welcome the another candidate, and I will work with whoever becomes the co-chair. And I just wanted to end with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the voting for community co-chair. And correct me if I'm wrong, Natasha, but it's going to be the same, or I think we got it.
Yes, it's the same.
Okay, everybody knows. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Okay, so there it is. Disregard the word abstain. You got two choices. Let us know who should be the next co-chair. Thank you.
We just have two more, and then we'll have the vote results.
Okay, so now you're seeing in front of you the voting results. So, Dave, is this the word that you like to use, quorum, for the way ahead?
You got to unmute here. Yes, we have a quorum, and we have 51% or more. So welcome aboard, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, thank you.
Congratulations, Mark. Looking forward to working with you.
Thanks, Arnie.
All right, thank you. Let's move forward, please. We're moving on now to the public comments section. We originally had set aside about an hour for this. But again, we had some good dialogue, some good questions throughout the meeting. So I think that was very well worth it to sit and to answer those as they came in. So now if we could open it up to the public so they could get their questions or comments in. So I'll go ahead and start with the first one. Because of time, if you ask more questions than one, I'm only going to use one, and the other questions will be answered in the minutes. So we're not going to forget about your questions or comments. We'll still get to it, but for the sake of time, we're going to do one for each. The first one that we had today was from
Malcolm,
yes.
I forgot that Representative Kildee, and then I think it was Mr. Moss. Yes, made comments about the disappointment that all the funds are not going to the interim remedial investigation. So for the minutes,
you want to address that?
I just go back to the 25 February 2020 letter from Secretary of the Air Force, and it's paragraph 1, 2, 3. And what we'll do is in the Q&A, we'll put the whole paragraph, but the paragraph talks about we've spent $14 million on PFAS through fiscal year 19. And these funds, the $13.5 million, will allow the Air Force to expedite the remedial investigation by 1 year, which is the next step in the CERCLA process. So AFCAC is complying with Secretary of the Air Force. And so the remedial investigation provides critical information on the nature and extent of contamination to conduct interim remedial actions if needed. So we'll insert that as far as responses to the comments and the questions. Okay, thank you.
Excuse.
Okay,
Can I make a comment to that, Dave? It's Jeff.
Who's speaking?
This is Jeff Moss speaking.
Okay.
So,
well, Jeff, I responded to your comment before. Representative Kildee made a statement. I would have responded then. I would like for you to add another comment.
No problem. I'll be happy to put it in the comment.
Yeah, let's get other folks that have been waiting to get their questions in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the first one we have here is from Tess Nelke, and forgive me if I mispronounce that. The question is, we don't know the impact of PFAS contamination in the health of the aquatic environment and all of the possible hazards associated with consuming fish harvested from contaminated waters. The AuSable River and nearby Lake Huron provide an important recreational and commercial fishery to residents and visitors. It is likely that the fish consumption is an important route of PFAS exposure to many people. What is being done to stop, not slow, but stop the contamination flow into the AuSable River in Lake Huron from the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base? Is that
I think the briefings talking about the interim remedial actions for addressing Air Force Beach and Clark's Marsh are directly answering that question of what's being done, and further that the remedial investigation is going to define either permanent solutions, long-term solutions, or some additional interim measures.
Okay. All right, thank you. The next question we had that came in, let's see, was from Daniel O'Connor. He asked, can you please show us somehow that the influent PFAS concentrations at FTO2 and Arrow Street have decreased over the time they have been functional? Thank you.
That will be a question we'll answer in the minutes from the Q&A.
Okay. Next in line was Mr. Anthony Spaniola, who wishes to speak. So I'll turn that floor over to you, Mr. Spaniola.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. So I would like to just make a few points. I think there are some misconceptions here tonight. There's been some backsliding and some statements that I think need to be clarified. First of all, the CERCLA process does not tie the Air Force's hands. We don't need a training on the CERCLA process to know, as Congressman Kildee stated quite clearly, that CERCLA mandates immediate action where there are imminent and substantial threats to public health and the environment. We clearly have that at the Van Etten Lake Beach, the former Air Force beach. And the statements that were made tonight, there was a lot of backsliding back and forth about we need to move further through the RI. No, we need to take action now. There's been 10 years of studies that have been done. Interim means immediate. Imminent means immediate. And we need to see action now, not 2 years down the road. And there should be sufficient money set aside to do that. Secondly, it is not accurate to say that Eagle has determined that the east side of Van Etten Lake is not the Air Force's responsibility. Eagle's study was inconclusive and more work needs to be done, particularly on the surface water contamination on the southeast side of the lake. And finally, I would just say that the information sharing between the Air Force and the RAB and the public is grossly inadequate. When we receive slides minutes or hours before the meeting, first of all, there should be actual input gotten from the public before these decisions are made through the RAB and otherwise. This type of conduct has gone on repeatedly year after year after year, and it results in poor management on the part of the Air Force, which has us in a position of 10 years with no real meaningful plan in place. And it leaves the public in the dark. And so rather than just dumping information at the last minute and avoiding accountability for actions, provide the information as soon as possible and partner with the RAB board, partner with Eagle, partner with the public, because this has gone on far too long. And the comments that were made tonight do not seem to signal a new direction here, and that is not acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next, we have a question from Mr. Bill Gaines. Brings up a good question. What happened to the action item review? Is that something that we could address right now, Dave, or?
I would like to push that to the next RAB. Unless we're done with all the questions.
We have one more question that has come in. I could do that one and then we'll take it from there, I guess. Okay, so the next one is from Jeff Moss. Are the contamination of Clark's Marsh and Van Etten Lake an immediate concern?
And so that's why I'm saying there's an action item to provide the details of that decision tree on what is an imminent health hazard that results in immediate response, emergency conditions, etc. So that's how we're going to answer the question.
Okay, thank you. And one more comment, and that is a comment request, and that comes from Artie. Artie.
Artie, your microphone is muted.
Okay. The comment answer that Dave gave on the money and everything, I want to have to submit a statement that the budgeting process between when Henderson told us that the RI would start in FY21, which is only 45 days away, the planning for that money should have been in the 21 president's budget not spending the additional congressional money that was added, which became the 13 million. We lost, my estimation, about 6 million to do an RI. We're taking it out of the 13 rather than a budget that should have been in the president's 21 budget. There's a little bit of swapping monies around that we don't know about that has been hampering Wurtsmith. Thank you.
You'll see that is addressed in Secretary Air Force letter of 25 January in that third paragraph.
I'll review it, but I doubt it. I've read it a few times, but I'll put it in and pass it through the new co-chair.
Okay. Any more comments or questions, Malcolm?
Yes, we have, let's see, from Mr. Eric Keller. When is, he's referring to the decision tree. When is that timeline being provided?
The decision tree wasn't a timeline. It was just if we're talking about the same thing, that's what is an imminent threat? And the person said there's a yes and a no. And what is it that makes something a yes or a no? So that's not a timeline. That's what are the criteria? And if the question is when will that be provided, that information will be provided as an attachment to the minutes.
Okay. Is that Mr. Keller? Is that what you were asking? If I don't know if you could speak or not, but let's see. Okay. Yes, I got a yes. So okay. That's all the questions and or comments we've gotten for the requests. Let me scroll through all this, make sure we're getting everybody.
Can you all put up the action item? Now there was a question about reviewing all the action items, with a question about reviewing the action items from this RAB.
Correct.
Was that Mr. Gaines that asked about that?
I believe so. Let me check. Double check. Yes, it is.
So, Mr. Gaines, would you want to confirm the action items from today's call, or do you want to start back to all the action items from?
Well, all I was saying was that somehow we have taken the time of the meeting. The action item that I thought I saw on the agenda, an action item review, we went right on past. At this point in time, I am 3 hours into a meeting and not sure that I'm totally capable of reviewing the action items. I just want to make the point that this is about 18 months of RAB when we've had things on the agenda and we really haven't reviewed action items. That's one of the reasons why we need a quarterly RAB or more frequent, is so that we don't have so many things we have to share that we can't actually take care of RAB business. And I think that at this point in time, it's appropriate to postpone that action item review to the next meeting. But we need to understand that we are simply doing that without taking actions that need to be done to make us effective.
And I can see your concern. And what I'd like to do is the action item list is provided to the RAB members, I think, along with the minutes of the meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Malcolm or Natasha. And what I'd like to have happen is the RAB members review the action item list, and perhaps to make sure if there's anything on the action item list that is falling off the plate in their mind, that they make a point to say, action item number 10 needs to be addressed at the next RAB. And then we're in between RABs, so when that action item goes out, that list goes out, provide input back. And so, Mark, I guess I would ask you to query the folks as looking at the minutes. We'll also look at the action items and And because I go through them, and I mean, I had the same sense of urgency with them that others would. So, but yeah, I would like to do that way. If there's something really sticking in somebody's craw, well, then let's make sure it pops up. Because to make the time to go through every single one line by line to confirm where it's at, that take a lot of time. But what we can do right now is Natasha has put up on the screen, I guess, a summary of the action items from tonight. And I think it is a good step to have everyone take a look at that and confirm with their notes what their recollection is. Is this a good summary of the action items from tonight? And that would be a good thing to do before we adjourn.
Yep. Okay, and if I may, while the RAB members are doing that, we had Kathy who had her hand up. So if you want to go ahead and speak right now, make a comment.
Thanks, Malcolm. Yep. Just one more thing. I'd like to thank Arnie for his dedicated and tireless service to the RAB. His efforts to create a RAB at Wurtsmith Air Force Base. He exemplifies the Rotary model of service above self, and I'm proud that he's been a member and will continue to be a member of this RAB.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. And then next, Arnie, you had your hand up.
Only that on the action item, Bill makes a good point, and I will work hard with Mark because we're about 2/3 of the way through trying to recapture over a year's worth of action items because the system changed on us and we just lost track of it and the communications. So thank you, David, for your focus on this and helping the co-chairs handle this in the future. So Bill and I will be transferring that off to Mark so that he understands and can start with that information we've been working on the last 3 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Gaines, you had another comment?
Yes, action item 3 is proposed. I believe Matthew Seiler's question was, what is the ground gallons per minute capability of the groundwater at the plants? We briefed what the current was, and he wanted to know what the capability was. So you need to make that clear.
Yeah, so what is the design GPM?
Yes.
Yeah, so insert the word design before GPM.
Okay. And then Mr. Mike Munson, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I didn't see an action item that I asked, very part of the meeting, that we charge the Air Force to release their plans for well locations. Now I realize we're early here, but I want that as an action item so that doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Yes, that's an action item.
Yeah, I think that was previously added, but we'll get it.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I think because we had the email exchange, and so Natasha, Malcolm, you're saying that was already added. This is the stuff from.
Yeah, we're tracking it because of your all's email.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an incomplete list of what we talked about today then, right?
Well, I guess you're right. What they saw was you repeated an action item that we'd already said we were going to add it to the list. So.
Okay, but I didn't see it on the list, so I should make sure it doesn't get lost.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and let's see, one more. Arnie, you got another comment?
Well, number 7, it's good to hear what we talked about tonight, but add in the description, reference the original action item that was submitted. I think it was February of 2018. So there's been some work on that. So let's just combine the two so we don't duplicate things.
Okay, so take the old action item from February 18, you said?
Right now, just reference in the description.
Reference it. Okay.
AI, February of 18.
Okay.
It's a repeat question.
Well, it really, It was never finished by the Air Force. Maybe that's my fault for not describing it as well, but I gave an example at another base where they were doing it. We'll work on it. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think there is no further public comments or questions. I think nobody else, RAB members, if you have anything, one last thing, raise your hands. If not, then we'll move forward with the final comments.
Okay, well,
Okay.
so from my standpoint,
Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
glad we got the elections done. We got to go back and track everybody's due dates for the next election. And because we want to minimize having to have elections all the time. The next RAB will be October. We'll be shooting for something around mid-October at this point. We'll be sharing, we've got to get we'll get the doodle poll out for the RRSE briefing over the next 2 weeks. So that'll be coming out. I'm really looking forward to this contract. The contracts are our tools for providing information. Wood had a contract. They provided the ESI. They went out and did work, provided reports. Those contracts are the source of that. So we have our RI contractor on board. You're going to be seeing work plans, designs. You're going to be hearing about meetings to discuss and coordinate. There's lots of stuff that has to happen. And so you will be seeing a lot more activity because we now have this contractor on board to start addressing the IRAs and the remedial investigation. So I think good things will happen from it. And that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. And then the community co-chair, Mr. Mark Henry, you have any closing remarks?
I do not. I'm looking forward to working with the RAB and getting through this process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I will we'll conclude the RAB, and thank you so much. I hope that we were able to get to everybody's questions or comments. Again, if for some reason you feel we didn't, we have a log and a way to record all this stuff, so we'll be answering it in the minutes either way. You're welcome to give us our feedback, any feedback like you did last time to help us to get better at this. So have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.